You know what I love about marriage-based green card cases? I love watching couples walk into my office having already done the research. They've already watched 20 YouTube videos. They read a thread on Reddit. They asked their cousin who filed in 2019 because their cousin obviously is now an expert on the entire United States immigration system because he got his green card 6 years ago. They come in confident. They have a folder. They have a plan. And they say to me, with that specific pride of a person who has read one article about a subject they're now certain they've mastered, William, we opened a joint bank account. And I say to them, oh, good. How much is in it? And they look at each other. They do the little marital thing. She kicks him under the table because they know $50. $50 is in the joint account. They've opened that. They opened it in April. It is now October. Neither of them has touched it. The Wells Fargo statement gets mailed to the mother's house. He doesn't know why. His wife does not know why. His mother does not know why. Nobody involved in such a situation understands why the joint bank account statement is being mailed to a woman in Charlotte who does not even have a joint bank account. They deposited $50 6 months ago because a YouTube video told them to, and they went back to their actual lives, which are financially organized. However, they had them organized before they met. And now they're sitting in my office, folder open, absolutely certain that USCIS is going to look at that $50 untouched, unloved, gathering zero interest in a Wells Fargo checking account with a mailing address to his mother's house and say, clearly these two people running a shared financial life, welcome to America. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not what USCIS is going to do. USCIS is going to look at that joint bank account and think, what happened to these people 6 months ago? Did they get married and then immediately stop speaking? Is one of them in a coma? Is there a reason two people who allegedly share a life have never once used the checking account they allegedly share? The $50 joint account is not evidence of marriage. It is evidence that you watch a YouTube video about marriage green cards. Those are different documents, and USCIS knows the difference. Three things before we get into it. First, I served in the United States Air Force. I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I did not take an oath to defend the $50 joint bank account strategy. That is a different oath, and I have not taken it. Second, I studied at seminary, Masters of Divinity, and at the end of this video, I'm going to read you a verse from Ecclesiastes that describes in one line exactly what a real marriage looks like before USCIS ever asks about it. That verse is going to hit different. Third, I am an immigration attorney. 15 years, thousands of cases handled, not one, handled. Because anyone selling you wins in immigration law is selling you something I'm not going to sell you. Now, let me tell you the thing every couple watching this needs to hear before we get to the 10 categories. USCIS is not asking whether you're married. Read that again. USCIS is not asking whether you're married. If USCIS wanted to know whether you were married, they would call the county clerk's office where your marriage license was issued. It would take about 11 seconds. They already know. They have it. They have your license in the file. What USCIS is asking is a different question, and this is the question every couple in this country who is filing an I-130 needs to answer, even when they don't know. That's the question. USCIS is asking, does the paperwork tell the story your marriage is already living? That is the whole video. If you turn this off right now and remember only one sentence, you have gotten what you came for. Does the paperwork tell the story your marriage is already living? A real marriage produces paper. It produces receipts, produces bank statements, utility bills, Christmas cards, and boring text messages about milk and electric bills. Real marriages leak evidence everywhere they go. Your job before you sit down with an immigration officer for the interview is to gather up the evidence your marriage has already been producing, organize it, and hand it over. Your job is not to manufacture evidence to convince an officer that a fake thing is real. If your marriage is real, you don't have to manufacture, but you do have to collect. The couples who get denied are almost never the couples with fake marriages. That is not what I'm seeing in the current environment. The couples who get denied are the couples with real marriages whose paperwork didn't tell the story their marriage was already living. To the just have a real marriage and you'll be fine crowd, I love you, I really do, but I need you to understand something. Every single one of your marriages leaks evidence. You don't think about it because you're not applying for anything. You go to church together, you file taxes together, you put your spouse on your health insurance, you update your emergency contact at work, you add each other to your Netflix account. That happens automatically because your marriage is running the same operating system every married person runs. The immigrant couple in front of an immigration officer is doing the same thing you're doing. They're just being asked to prove it because you get to prove yours by existing. They have to prove theirs by handing over documents. If your rule is just be really married and you'll be fine, your rule requires the immigrant couple to manufacture the evidence you produce without thinking. You produce yours passively because nobody asked. They produce theirs actively because somebody does. This is the entire distinction. Everything else is you feeling superior about the fact that nobody has asked you to prove your life. Nobody has to ask you. The state does not doubt you. That is a privilege, not a virtue. That's the question. Now the 10 categories of evidence organized by weight, starting with the one that carries the most. If you have been married long enough to file taxes together and you file jointly, that is one of the heaviest single pieces of evidence you can hand USCIS. Why? Because filing jointly is not just paperwork. You are telling the federal government that you are one financial household. You are accepting joint liability under penalty of perjury. You are effectively betting your entire tax posture on the reality of your marriage. And nobody does that for fun, and nobody does that for fake. USCIS knows that. And when they see a joint 1040 signed under penalty of perjury, filed with the IRS listing both of you as married filing jointly, that document does work no amount of Instagram photos can do. But here's where it gets fun. And I already know some percentage of you watching this video are already writing in the comments, William, we couldn't file jointly because my spouse doesn't have a social security number. And I know that is a real thing, but you have options you may not know about. A non-citizen spouse without a social security number can, in some circumstances, get an individual taxpayer identification number, an ITIN, and file jointly with their U.S. citizen spouse under that ITIN. Couples who filed as married filing separately for prior tax years may be able to amend those returns and refile as married filing jointly, depending on the specifics. Do not do this yourself. Talk to a tax professional and an immigration attorney because a tax amendment strategy that looks great to a CPA can look weird to USCIS if it's not handled correctly. But the principle stands. If you were legally able to file jointly and you didn't, USCIS is going to notice, and they are going to want to know why. To you, you shouldn't have to file taxes with a fake spouse crowd. The IRS defines spouse by state law. If the state where you got married considers you married, the IRS considers you married. So you don't get to override the IRS's definition of marriage based on how skeptical you feel about somebody else's relationship. The IRS is going to accept the joint return. USCIS is going to weigh it. Your opinion about the marriage is not a form USCIS accepts. That's category one. Category two is where the joint account joke is open. I open with actually earns his keep. Now, do you remember the $50 joint account from the cold open? That account was not bad. It's just that the account by itself does not work. The joint account is a container. USCIS wants to see what you actually put in the container and what you actually paid from that container. A real shared financial life looks like this. Paychecks going in, rent coming out, groceries showing up in the transaction ledger, an electric bill auto paying every month, the streaming subscription charging to the joiner card, the vacation to Cancun 4 months ago that show up as a hotel charge and an airline charge, and a suspicious number of Corona Extra line items at the resort bar. That is what a joint account of two people who share a life looks like. The $50 joint account from the cold open, the one that was open in April, never touched, and the mail statements to his mother does not do that work because the couple in the cold open did not open the account to share their financial life. They opened the account to make a screenshot they could put in their I-130 packet. USCIS knows the difference between a screenshot account and a life account. Here's an actual test. If your joint account over the last 12 months could be handed over to a neutral reader, a friend, a sibling, a CPA, and that neutral reader could look at it and say, yeah, these two people are running a household together, you're good. But if your joint account over the last 12 months could be handed over to the same neutral reader and they look at it and say, why is there only $50 in there? you have work to do. The work is not opening a new account and putting more money in it. The work is actually using the account for what the account is for. Deposit checks, pay bills, buy groceries, cover the phone bill, let the account run your household. Now, to the nobody uses joint accounts anymore, everybody Venmos crowd. First, congratulations on being under 35. Second, USCIS is not asking about your Venmo habits. USCIS is asking whether your financial lives are demonstrably intertwined. Venmo transactions between spouses are evidence. Cell transactions are evidence. Credit card statements showing joint household spending are evidence. You don't have to have a traditional joint account to prove joint finances. You have to have evidence of a joint life. If your evidence is a Venmo history showing you paying rent to your spouse every month for 2 years, that's evidence. It's just evidence of a different structure. The old school joint account works. Modern structure also works. What does not work is no evidence at all. That's category 2. Category 3 is the one that gets couples in trouble more often than any other, and this is the one that seems the most obvious. For most couples, this feels obvious. Of course, we live together. We share a bed. Look at us. We're a couple. And I know, and I believe you. I am not the person you have to convince. USCIS is a person you have to convince, and USCIS is going to look at your documentation of your shared address, which in an alarming number of cases is the lease with only one name on it. Because when you moved in, only one of you signed the lease because the other one wasn't on your income application because the leasing office said it didn't matter because you never thought about it. And that was fine right up until the moment USCIS asked to see the lease. The fix is not complicated. Add your spouse to the lease now. Ask the leasing office. They typically say yes. They may want to rerun credit and do that. If you own the home, get your spouse added to the utility accounts. Water, gas, electricity, internet, every recurring bill in your household should ideally have both names on it, or at the minimum, some bills in each name at the same address. That paper trail is not weird. That paper trail is what a normal married couple looks like when you audit their utilities. To the couple whose every recurring bill is only in one name because they never bother to update after the wedding, that is the couple whose paperwork does not tell the story that their marriage is already living. To the I've been married for 12 years and my utility bills are all in my husband's name crowd, congratulations. Nobody has audited you. If somebody did, tomorrow you would spend a weekend digging through your Gmail to find one utility bill with your name on it. And you would have to make jokes about it because it would be genuinely difficult. That is not because your marriage is weak. It's because the state has not asked. The immigrant couple has been asked. That is the entire distinction. Your marriage is not more real than theirs because nobody is auditing yours. It just feels that way from where you're sitting. Category 4 is what I like to call the beneficiary trap, and it's the one that catches so many couples completely off guard. When was the last time you looked at who is listed as a beneficiary on your 401k, your life insurance policy, your employer-provided term life, or your HSA? Right. Now, this is the trap. When you got married, you probably did a bunch of updates. You updated your health insurance. You updated your tax withholding. You updated your emergency contact. You may even have updated your social security card. You definitely updated your Instagram because that's definitely important. But you probably didn't touch the beneficiary form on the 401k who you set up in 2018 when you started your first real job. And that beneficiary form still lists your ex-girlfriend, maybe your ex-girlfriend from college, or your mother, or your best friend from high school who is now going through a divorce, or nobody at all because you never filled it out. The form is now going to sit in the paperwork trail your spouse will look at and USCIS may look at, and neither of them is going to be thrilled about what it says. The fix? Take 30 minutes tonight. Log into every retirement account, every insurance policy, every employer benefit, every HSA. Update the benefit to your spouse, assuming that's what you actually want to happen if you were to die tomorrow, which should be because you married them. This is not a USCIS specific move. This is general adult life hygiene that most married people should do anyways. But it also happens to be one of the specific inconsistencies USCIS is going to notice. Show USCIS a marriage that is actually organized like a marriage. beneficiaries updated, insurance policies aligned, retirement designations pointing to the spouse. That paper trail does quiet, powerful work in your life. To the why is USCIS looking at my 401k beneficiary crowd? Because your 401k beneficiary is a legally binding declaration of who inherits that money if you were to die. If your legally binding declaration says your ex-girlfriend and not your spouse, USCIS is entitled to notice the mismatch between what your paperwork says and what you're telling them your life looks like. And that is not intrusive. That is basic file review on a legal filing. If you don't want to be reviewed, don't file. If you file, be reviewed. That's category 4. Category 5 is where the comedy dies for a minute, because we're going to talk about children. And I'm going to be careful because families come in shapes that YouTube comedy cannot always honor. If you and your spouse have children together, that is some of the strongest possible evidence a marriage is real. The birth certificate, the pediatrician records, the school form listing both parents, the photos. That evidence does not require staging. It just exists. You made a child. Your file will reflect that. But I want to say this carefully because a lot of couples applying for marriage-based green cards do not have children yet for 100 legitimate reasons, none of which a USCIS is entitled to inquire about. You do not need to have children to have a real marriage. You do not need to have children to have a strong I-130 file. You need to have the evidence your marriage is producing. If children are part of the evidence, good. If children are not part of the evidence, other categories do the work. The couples I've seen mess this up are the couples who lean too heavily on the one strong piece of evidence and let the other 9 categories go weak. USCIS wants to see the whole picture. One strong document does not compensate for 9 weak ones. So category 6 is where the comedy comes back, because we're going to talk about photographs, and I have opinions. Here's the mistake I see all the time. Couples come to my office, they dump 500 photos in a Google Drive folder. They send me the link and they say, William, we have the photos, every photo, every angle, every event, every meal we've eaten together for 2 years. I open the folder, 500 photos, 0 organization, 0 context, 0 timeline, just a 500 photo deluge, including 47 photos of the same sunset, 16 photos of a dog that is not their dog, and 1 photo that is very clearly from before they met each other. USCIS is not going to look at 500 photos. USCIS is going to look at 40 to 60 photos maximum. And the 40 to 60 photos USCIS looks at needs to tell a timeline. First date, restaurant, 6 months photo trip, meeting each other's families, engagement, wedding, honeymoon, family holidays, birthday parties, random Tuesdays where you were just at home together, different settings, different clothes, different seasons, different people in the background, photos where a neutral observer can look at them and say, these are 2 people who have been building a life together over multiple years. The 500 photo dump does not do that. The 40 photo timeline does. Curate, label, date, organized by chronology, include the people in your photo, your parents, her parents, siblings, roommates, church friends, whoever's orbiting your life, because a marriage is not just 2 people. A marriage is 2 people embedded in a community that recognizes them. That community shows up in the photo. Let USCIS see it. To the I don't take a lot of photos, is that a problem crowd? Some of the strongest marriages I've seen are marriages where the couple doesn't really take photos. And that is a legitimate way to live. If your evidence is thinner on photos, weigh the other 9 categories more heavily. This is not a photo contest. It's a marriage audit. Photos are one input. Category 7 is where a lot of people get in trouble without realizing they're in trouble. It's about your online life. This is the one where I want to sit down every applicant and say, did you take down the Hinge profile? Sometimes the answer is, I don't remember my password. And just get in there, reset the password, and take it down. Yes, but I was going to use it for take it down. But what if doesn't matter, take it down. The active dating profile of one spouse while both spouses are trying to convince USCIS they're in a committed marital relationship is one of the most avoidable unforced errors in the entire process. And it happens constantly because people set their profiles up in 2019, forgot the password, forgot the profile existed, and moved on. USCIS did not forget. USCIS has contractors that search these platforms. Delete every active dating profile. Update your Facebook relationship status. Update your Instagram bio if you're the kind of person who has that stuff. Update the emergency contact on your LinkedIn if it's still your college roommate. Basically, audit your public digital footprint against the story your I-130 is telling. Your online life should match your paperwork, and your paperwork should match your online life. If those two don't match, USCIS is going to ask why. And I forgot my Hinge password. It's not an answer that plays well in a green card interview. To the privacy exists for a reason, USCIS shouldn't look at my social media crowd. I actually agree with you on principle. Government surveillance on civilian social media raises real Fourth Amendment questions, and there is a serious civil liberties debate here. But until the law catches up to your principles, USCIS is looking at it, and you have to advise your clients based on the law that exists, not the law you wish existed. I'll fight for the civil liberties argument in a bar association debate, but I'll also tell my clients to update their Hinge profiles before their interview. And both things are true. Category 8 is the one I love most because it's about the boring stuff, and the boring stuff is the most convincing. Here's the thing nobody tells you about text messages as evidence of a marriage. The boring texts are actually the most convincing. Read that again. The boring texts are the most convincing because real married couples don't text each other Shakespearean sonnets on a Tuesday afternoon. Real married couples text each other things like, "Can you pick up the milk? I'm running late. Did you pay the electric bill? The dog threw up on the couch. Can we do tacos tonight? I don't want to cook. Where are the good scissors? Why does your mother keep sending me pictures of the cat?" Those are the texts USCIS wants to see because those texts cannot be faked by a couple in a sham marriage. The 47 message conversation about who is going to take out the trash is a document of coexisting. No froster is going to be patient enough to invent that. Pull the last 3 months of text messages, not the highlights, not the romantic ones, just a normal 3-month stretch. Screenshot maybe 20 or 30 of them. Include the boring ones, especially the boring ones, the milk text. The one is worth more than any Instagram caption you've ever written. To the "why are they reading your text that's invasive" crowd, the couple is voluntarily submitting the text as evidence in support of their application. USCIS is not tapping their phone. The couple is handing over selected screenshots. That is the couple's decision. If the couple would rather not hand over text, they can decline. USCIS may then weigh other categories more heavily. Nobody's being forced. This is voluntary evidence submission, which is how every American civil legal filing works. Category 9 is where a lot of well-meaning families accidentally make things worse. It's about affidavits. If you have watched even one YouTube video about I-130 evidence, you have heard that affidavits from friends and families are useful. They are, sometimes, but here's when they help. An affidavit that says, "I attended their wedding on May 14, 2023 at an Immaculate Conception Catholic Church in Charlotte. I sat in the third row. I know the bride because I grew up next door to her family in Puebla. I have watched this couple every Sunday at Mass for the last 2 years. When their son was born last October, I brought them tamales for the entire week." It's useful. It has details, it has specifics, it has receipts. Here's when affidavits do not help. The one that says, they are wonderful. They are a wonderful couple. Everyone loves them. Signed, cousin. That affidavit is worse than no affidavit because it tells USCIS you scrambled for evidence at the last minute, and that is the best the family can produce on short notice. 2 or 3 specific detailed affidavits from people who actually know the marriage. Those are the ones that are worth more than 10 generic ones. Ask your affiance to include specific dates, specific events, specific details only somebody who actually knows you would know. Real friends know things. Get them to write them down. Get them to write down what they know. Category 10 is a bucket, and into this bucket, you throw everything else the marriage is producing: wedding invitations, guest lists, vendor receipts, boarding passes from trips together, hotel confirmations, the Christmas card list your spouse your spouse's aunt sent last year, the gym membership with both names, the Costco card, the AAA membership, the Netflix profile with your spouse's name on it, the Uber account with joint payment information, the Amazon Prime household, the plane tickets to your mother's funeral, the receipts from your niece's quinceañera you paid for together. Individually, none of these documents is going to win your case, but collectively, they paint a picture no fraudster can paint. USCIS knows this. Every officer who has been on the job for 5 years has seen the no category 10 file, the file that is bank statements, leases, taxes, and photos, and nothing else. And that file screams, we prepared for the interview. The good file has all the boring incidental evidence a real life produces. The Costco card, the gym contract, the wedding thank you cards, the AAA membership. That file screams, we are simply handing over the paperwork our life is already producing. And that's the file that wins. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. The verse reads, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone. When he falls, he has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." Notice what the writer of Ecclesiastes says at the end. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Two people, one cord, three strands. Christian tradition has read this passage for 2,000 years as a description of a marriage. Two spouses joined together and a third strand, not to make the marriage stronger by legal contract, not to make the marriage stronger by tax benefit, not to make the marriage stronger by USCIS approval. The third strand is God. It simply is, which means, and I want to be careful when I say this, the third strand in your marriage is not USCIS. It never was, it never will be. USCIS can approve your file. USCIS can deny your file. USCIS can send an RFE that keeps you up at 3 in the morning. USCIS cannot make your marriage more real than it already is. And USCIS cannot make it less real than it already is. The marriage is what it is. The paperwork is the paperwork. The audit is the audit. There are three different things. For every couple watching this before your interview, I want you to hold that verse in your mind when you walk into that office. You are already what you are. You are already married. The interview is not a test of whether your marriage exists. The interview is a paperwork audit of documentation your marriage was already producing. Prepare the paperwork, organize the file, update the beneficiary, delete the hinge profile, save the boring text, bring the affidavits, do the work, and know that the cord holding you together was not spun by USCIS. If your pastor has not preached Ecclesiastes 4 in the last 5 years, ask him why. Here's what I want you to do right now before you keep scrolling. One, comment one word, story, because that's the whole video. Does the paperwork tell the story your marriage is already living? Comment story and tell me in your own words which of the 10 categories your file is weakest in and which one you already had covered without realizing it. I read every comment, and yes, I do laugh when you tell me about the $50 joint account. Two, right now, send this video to one person. One, the engaged friend planning her I-130 next year, the cousin who just got married and is starting the paperwork, the couple at your church who filed 6 months ago and they're terrified. One person, send it. Do not add a long message. They will understand. They will laugh at the joint account joke. They will then check their own joint account balance and they will take notes. Forward it by WhatsApp to the family group chat, especially the family group chat, because every married couple in that chat has at least one form somewhere in the house where the beneficiary is still their ex-girlfriend from college, and now they know. Three, to the just have a real marriage and stop asking me to look at your paperwork crowd. Every real marriage produces paperwork. Yours does too. You just don't have to hand it over to a federal agency. The immigrant couple does, and that is not because their marriage is weaker. It is because your privilege includes never being audited. Enjoy your privilege quietly. Their marriage is not the problem. Four, the next video in this series covers a new DHS travel tracking system launching in December. If you plan to travel internationally after Christmas, and you should know what the government is building, it's called the new USCIS travel rule could ruin your travel plan starting December 26th. Full $1 billion biometric surveillance system, cross-agency data sharing, AI pattern detection on your travel history, and I'm going to walk through the whole thing. Subscribe, bell on, forward by WhatsApp tonight. And to the every couple watching this from your kitchen table with a folder of documents and about 600 questions, let me close the way I close with every client. You did not come to this country to be afraid. You came to live. You got married. You built a life. You produced the evidence a marriage produces. Now you're going to hand USCIS the file that tells that story. The story your marriage is already living. Prepare the paperwork. Organize the file. Save the boring text. Stay sharp. Stay documented. Stay ready.